Want to welcome you. It's Holy Week, and we are celebrating Maundy Thursday, which is traditionally, it's the Thursday before Easter. It's the day before Good Friday. And it's at this service that we think about, we remember the Last Supper that Jesus has with his disciples, where he gives them something to remember. And he gives them a new commandment. The word Mondays, it's maybe a weird word, maybe you've never really thought about it. The word Monday comes from the Latin word mandatum, which is the Latin word for commandment. And that's really what Jesus does on this evening, is he gives his disciples a new commandment, a commandment to move forward. And so we're going to invite you to join us for this time of worship. And so let's begin with some songs of worship and praise.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, ransom me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace.
And we're hopeful that that brings comfort to you wherever you're at today, that you would think about the grace that God has shown us this week. So whether you're stuck at home, or whether it's more severe than that, maybe it's the reality of the financial crunch, or just worrying about what tomorrow will bring. It is our prayer this evening that you would feel and know that grace this evening.
Light of the world, you step down into darkness. Open my eyes, let me see beauty that made this heart adore you. Hope of a life spent with you. So here I am to worship. Here I am to bow down. Here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. King of all days, oh so highly exalted, glorious in heaven above. Humbly you came to the earth you created, all full of sin became poor. So here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. And I'll never know how much it costs to see my sin upon that cross. So here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me. So here I am to worship, here I am to bow down, here I am to say that you're my God. You're altogether lovely, altogether worthy, altogether wonderful to me.
Again, we're so glad that you're with us this Maundy Thursday, and we have been tracking the story of Jesus throughout the Gospel of John. We've been going through this series that we call Bystander, where we've been looking at the 7 signs in John's Gospel. All of those signs pointing to, really this week, pointing to the events that are happening tomorrow, and of course that end on Resurrection Sunday. And so we're going to use John's Gospel again tonight to sort of help us track. But just a few things really in terms of announcements. We do want to invite you, first and foremost, if you're watching this today, you can watch us again tomorrow. We're going to have a Good Friday service that is going to be online as well. We'll put that online around noon on Good Friday, and of course leading us into Easter. And so on Easter Sunday, we are planning a drive-in service. It will look very similar to a drive-in movie theater. We're going to have cars lined up outside. We're going to have a stage set up outside. Our sound system will be out there. We're going to make sure that you are safe. So if you come, we're going to have no contact. We're going to give you a little bag that's going to have really everything you need for the whole entire service. And someone with gloves is going to hand that to you, and we're going to make sure we pack that with safety as well. But you'll be able to tune in. You'll be able to sit in your car and listen to the entire service. We're going to broadcast it right through to your car radio station. If you want to crack your windows a little bit, you'll be able to listen to us on the speakers as well. So rain or shine, we're going to do that on Easter Sunday. So it's going to be this Sunday at 11 o'clock. So we're just going to have one service that Sunday. So if you will, please join us. As we've been also cautioning as well, you know, as much as we would love to see everybody, as much as we would love to have the parking lot full, we're also still cautioning if you're in a high risk population, we're going to ask you to enjoy us online. So we're going to broadcast everything we do on Sunday morning. It's going to be online as well. So if you don't still feel safe, even in that closed car environment, we're going to ask you to enjoy us at home. So whatever you're doing this weekend, we pray that this would just be a wonderful time of worship and grace as we've opened up here. But again, we've been walking through the Gospel of John, and last Sunday was Palm Sunday, and it was the day where Jesus is marching into the city of Jerusalem. And the disciples are excited. There's a lot of energy, and there's a lot of things that are going on this week. If you look through any of the Gospels, there's a lot of activity that happens from that Sunday up until this point. But when we get to this point, when we get to Thursday evening, this is where the story really does change entirely for the disciples. And I want you to sort of think about something. You're excited about something that's going to happen tomorrow. I want you to imagine you were, at Christmas Eve and you're going to bed and you're just kind of excited, or maybe your family's going to Disney and you leave tomorrow, and all the preparation and all the energy that went into that, you come to that evening before and there's just a lot of excitement. And that's probably what is happening with the disciples at this point. There's a lot of change that is about to take place, and for the disciples, this is going to turn into something that they really did not know that was coming. And it's kind of hard for us to process that, and when you look at the Gospels, Jesus sort of warns them really almost every step of the way. As they're coming through, especially during this week, he tells his disciples over and over and over again, this is what's going to happen when we get to Jerusalem. This is what's going to happen when I'm arrested, when I'm turned over to the religious authorities. This is what's going to happen to me physically, but on the third day, I'm going to be raised again. And so as many times as Jesus tries to explain this to his followers, it's almost like they can't process it. Almost in the same way if someone were to say, hey, it may be a long ride tomorrow on the way to Disney. You're not even listening to it. You're just sort of letting that stuff wash past you. But we do arrive in this moment, and the text that we're in this evening, it's in John chapter 13. And John has gathered the disciples in an upper room environment, and they're sharing a Passover meal, which is, for the Jewish people, it's a traditional it has a traditional setting. There's a traditional table that is set before them. There are a number of elements that point them all the way back to the middle of the book of Exodus. Exodus chapters 12, 13, 14, 15. The story of the last plague that comes upon Egypt and the eventual freeing of the people under Moses' leadership to the Promised Land. And so this meal, this Passover meal, was done every year. It was a huge deal. It was an incredibly important thing for the family. It was an incredibly important thing for the religious community. And what the disciples were probably thinking was going to happen was, we're going to share this Passover meal, and we're going to have a great time. It's going to be even better than last Passover. It's going to be even better than a Passover when we were kids. And tomorrow, we're going to go into the city, and something's going to happen. Jesus is going to be crowned as king. There's going to be a revolt that starts. There's going to be cries of freedom, and there's going to be people who are going to jump to arms. And that's really not anything that Jesus has in mind. So he gathers his disciples in the very first part of John chapter 13. Jesus does not go into a teaching session as much as he goes into an incredible visual picture. He takes the disciples and he gathers them. He takes off his shirt, he wraps a towel around himself, and he goes about the business of washing the disciples' feet. And this is where it really starts to bother the disciples. They're probably just looking like, what are you doing? This is not something that our king should be doing. This is not something that the Messiah, the one who's going to lead us to victory tomorrow, this is not what he should be doing. In fact, Peter rebukes them. He doesn't want to. Lord, I don't want you to do this. This is something for a servant to do. And Jesus says, no, if you don't do this, then you have no part of me. And Peter, in sort of typical Peter fashion, decided, well, okay, if that's the case, then wash me entirely. Wash my entire body. And again, they're trying to sort of figure out, if you've ever been in one of those situations where you're trying to read the room, you're trying to sort of figure out, maybe there's a game in here that's going on. I don't understand what's going on, so I'm going to try my best to sort of play along, and hopefully I'll catch up. That's what Peter is doing. There's probably some laughter. There's probably some storytelling. There's probably some recounting of the last few times that Jesus had encounters with the Pharisees or the Sadducees, and they're probably sort of joking amongst themselves, remembering, man, can you believe it when he said this? And when he told them about the coin and giving to Caesar that which is Caesar's, their mouth just dropped open. But then Jesus proceeds to tell them something else. He says, hey, one of you is going to betray me. And again, they sort of realize, we have no mooring here. We've just lost all bounds. What do you mean one of us is going to betray you? And so their first thought is probably to themselves, is he talking about me? And then they start looking around the room. And then they start probably going through a process of sort of inward finger pointing, realizing, hey, I didn't like that guy anyways. We shouldn't have picked that guy. He's the one. And they have let some of those emotions go that they've been holding for maybe the last 3 years. But Jesus sort of directs his attention towards Judas. Then Judas gets up and leaves. And they're probably just sort of like, what is going on? But it's at this point that Jesus launches one of the most amazing things that he ever says. And at this point in the gospel, we've heard a lot. We've heard Jesus' teaching about him being the good shepherd, him being the light. We've seen him raise Lazarus. We've seen the blind see. We've seen all kinds of incredible things. But what he says in this chapter really turns the evening, and it turns their entire lives upside down. He's talking to them, and he says, when he had gone out, after Judas left, Jesus said, "Now the Son of Man is glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and glorify him at once. Little children, yet a little while I am with you. You will seek me, and just as I said to the Jews, so now I also say to you, where I am going, you cannot come." And as weird as that sounds, like what is he talking about? Where are you going that we can't follow you? We've been following you. We've been with you every single day. Where are you going to go that we can't find you? And they're trying their best to process this. They're trying their best to sort of figure out what exactly he is saying. And then what Jesus says in verse 34 is really the whole root. It's the whole reason why we have this evening. And again, why we call it Maundy Thursday. He gives them a new commandment. He says in verse 34, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You also are to love one another." Now, that may not sound as earth-shattering to us. If you listen to any kind of music, if you're a Beatles fan, everybody talks about love. Love, love, love. Everybody should know the idea of love. But why is this so challenging for them? Because what Jesus is doing in this moment, he is not just giving them another commandment. In fact, what Jesus is doing, the shocking thing that he is doing with this evening, is that he is taking this Passover scene and he's making it all about himself. Imagine if you were to show up on Christmas and I come to your house on Christmas and I say, "Hey, you've been singing songs to Jesus and you've been singing songs about Santa Claus or whatever you've been doing on Christmas. Hey, I want you to stop doing all of that. And now you're going to all sing songs about me." You would all look at me kind of weird. But that's exactly what Jesus is doing. This whole thing, everything that is on this table and everything that I've been telling you goes into this new idea. And for those of us, in this country, we make a big to-do about the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments are usually there's a Ten Commandments that's on a courthouse or a school or there's a monument to the Ten Commandments. And then sometimes if you live in a community, there'll be a fight about the Ten Commandments. There's a group that wants to take the Ten Commandments down. There's a group that doesn't want that to happen. We need to have the Ten Commandments up. All of that. What's amazing, though, is that we don't fight to put this commandment up. No one's fighting to put this on a plaque somewhere on our building and somewhere in town. That's really what Jesus is doing. He is taking this one statement, and he is saying to his disciples, he's saying, "I'm not giving you another commandment." The Old Testament had 613 laws. Some counts there's over 700 if you sort of break them up a different way. Jesus is not giving them law number 614. What he is saying is, this is the one that I want you to do. I'm giving you this new commandment. And what is that new commandment? That you love one another. And what he is doing, in addition to making this new commandment, he is making a new covenant. Now we have this terminology, we use this terminology all the time. We talk about the New Testament and the Old Testament. The word testament is really just another translation. It's the word covenant. And what Jesus is starting with his disciples is a new covenant. Which means that you are not stuck, you are not bound, you are not still under what you have in the old. And in all reality, as the disciples heard this, they really should have just gotten up. They should have just gotten up and said, "Nope, nope, nope, nope. That's gone too far." But what Jesus does, what he makes sure that they understand as he walks them through John chapter 13. And the disciples keep asking, and they want to sort of figure this out. Hey, show us the Father. That was one of the questions that they're posing to him. If you just show us the Father, that is enough. And what Jesus says, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. And he's making this powerful connection that not just that I'm a good teacher, that I'm somebody that is an eloquent speaker, that I have a way to outsmart the religious officials. No, it's way, way more than that. I and the Father are one. And I'm giving you a new commandment. And I'm giving you a new covenant. I'm giving you a new covenant. And he explains it even further. If you're not sure what he's meaning by this, in verse 35 he says, By this, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. And so, I don't want to take anybody back to English class, but the word, what does he mean by this? By this, what is the this? The this is that new commandment. You are not going to be known as my disciples by how well you memorize the Ten Commandments. You're not going to be known as my disciples by all your religious knowledge. You are not going to be known by any particular position that you hold or anything else. You're going to be known by one thing only. You are going to be known by the way you love one another. Jesus, in all accounts, he's basically saying, hey, you in a sort of an action way, I want you to go love that person. I want you to go love that person. It's just that direct. There's no real middleman. There's no sort of way around it. I want you to go love this person. By all respects, Jesus would probably be either the best or the worst marriage counselor. If he has a couple in his office, he would say, you two, stop fighting, go home, and love each other. That's the rest of the hour. Here we go, we're done. Okay? But that's all that he is saying in this. This is all that he is inferring. He wants the disciples to do this one thing. This is the commandment. This is what is behind Maundy Thursday. He gives them the elements off the table. He breaks the bread. He offers them the cup. He says, this is the body. This is my body, which is broken for you. And he says the same thing about the cup. He says, this is the cup. It is the new covenant. So all of this is to sort of memorialize, to crystallize everything that he's been saying up to this point. I and the Father are one, and I want you to do one thing. So it makes it extremely simple. It makes it very easy. I won't say easy. It's simple, but it's actually probably the hardest thing that we have to do. We don't get to put people to the side because of beliefs. We don't get to put people to the side because of where they come from or where they've been or what they've done. We have one commandment. And in this season where we're all sort of just in the house and we're social distancing, there's going to be one commandment that is still in force for us. And I hope as we come out of this season that you will do this one thing, that you will truly love one another. Let's pray. God, we thank you. We thank you for making it very simple. God, you sent your Son to earth to make it very, very simple. And we cloak it in religion, and we cloak it in tradition, and we cloak it in all kinds of things that keep us away from one another. But at the heart of it, it is really the truth. You want us to love one another. God, I pray that whenever we come out of this season, whenever we're allowed to go back to sporting events and allowed to work on a regular basis and allowed to do sort of normal things again, that we would realize there is a reason we are here. And it's perhaps to learn and to see and to realize this one thing, that we are here to love one another. And all this we pray in your name. Amen.
Holy fire, burn away my desire for anything that is not of you and is of me. I want more of you and less of me. Empty me. Desire for anything that is not of you and is of me. I want more of you and less of me. Empty me.
Y'all have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow for our Good Friday service online. Have a great night.
Can be applied to whatever you want to be. What do you want to be when you grow up?
¿Cuántos años tienen los niños? ¿Tienen?
Bobby. Man, what's your latest track though? That's what I was doing.
Ain't done nothing.
What?
Them days are done.
How is everyone's week?
It's good.
It's good. Has it been busy up here? Let me transfer you over to our desk. So we have a basketball.
Es esa.
Oh, thank you.
You say it's like regular.
Sometimes doing the right thing, sometimes not the popular thing. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't the most fun thing. Sometimes everybody else isn't going to do the right thing.
So if you guys want to flip to Exodus 17, if you have your phones, Bibles.
Gracias, Señor, porque tú eres bueno y porque tú eres fiel. Y te doy gracias porque tú has dado una promesa. No llores, no llores, que voy a llorar yo.
got a pretty good group here today that wanted to be here to.
It's always a lot easier to me to try to bring people together. And when you did, and when you reached out to people, I think it makes an enormous difference.
Come on, dude, give me some more, man. You doing all right, man?
Nothing else will change the world but love and mercy and compassion and grace, and not judging people for the way they look or what they do, but just loving them.
We lack unity because we think in order to be united we need to experience the same thing. We need to talk the same language, use the same phrase. Unity never comes that way. Cross draws men from their sin, from their isolation, draws them to the center, changes their eccentricity and makes them Christ-centered and therefore normal. What it draws is not the method, it's not a technique, it's not a program. If you draw men that way, they will be left in suspense and confused. Oh, let the cross draw. The magnet of God. Men respond, and hearts are melted, and rebels are brought back, and prodigals are forgiven, and oh, what a wonderful experience when he draws. Are you going to give him room to draw? Most of us are in the way. We are too strong to give him room. Too big to be blessed. Too nice to be convicted. Too clever to be caught. We need to present him to men and step aside and introduce him and let people deal with him. Receive each other. As you come to embrace each other. As you come to be blessed, bless each other. Letting the whole world hear his voice till he comes to rule forever and ever.